Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. It's time now for business news with Matthew Warren. Hello, Matthew. So you're going to start off with the stock market in Tokyo because there's been a big jump this Wednesday.
Yes, now the market there has closed for the Wednesday trading session, but I can tell you the Nikkei index was up 3.8% this Wednesday. That's a pretty big jump. In fact, it's the highest we've seen it since September 2008. Now, what's going on? Well, partly it's on the back of a weakening yen, but it's also to do with the fact that the governor of the Bank of Japan, Misaki Shirakawa, is stepping down. Now, it's only slightly ahead of the planned end of his term, but it's fueling expectations that a new governor will be more sympathetic to the government's stated plans to see more stimulus for the Japanese economy. So investors liking some of that. Let's take you as well to the European markets, which are just opening this Wednesday morning, and they are pretty flat at the open, and as you can see there, all just nudging very, very slightly into the green for now.
Okay. Well, we're going to stay here in Europe, and in fact here in France, because there's some hope for the 500 workers who are threatened with job losses in the north.
Yes, now this is all to do with the Petroplus petrol refinery in Normandy. Now 5 offers have been received to take that over. It's been threatened with closure ever since the company that owns it, the Swiss company, went into bankruptcy protection last year. Well, consideration of those bids will start in earnest this Wednesday. Siobhan Silk has more.
All day, the 470 employees of Petroplus waited for news. Relief came in the evening. There were 5 offers for the takeover of the troubled refinery, 2 of them deemed credible. The Swiss group Swiss Terre International and the Egyptian group Arabia are the leading contenders, bearing good news for the workers.
Arabia's offer includes retaining all staff, except for those who plan to ask for early retirement. That's about 60 people right now.
The bidders need to prove to a bankruptcy court that they have hundreds of millions of euros to invest in the struggling refinery. The government, anxious to avert a liquidation, says it will provide financing if required.
The state and the public fund will assist as a minority participant if it's necessary.
Unions are remaining cautious about the fate of the refinery until they know the finer details of the possible takeover.
We're going to look at the offers, study them carefully to make sure there are no nasty surprises.
The court now has to rule on the suitability of potential bidders. By the end of the month, the Petroplus workers should know what's in store.
Siobhan Silk reporting there. Well, moving on to technology now, Matthew, and some big changes likely over at Dell, the computer maker.
Yes, Michael Dell, who founded that company almost 30 years ago, has launched a $24 billion deal to take it off the stock market back into private hands. And he's doing that with a private equity firm called Silver Lake Partners, and also Microsoft are involved as well. Now, it's expected that if this deal goes ahead, it's not a done deal yet, but if it does, the company will focus much more on its business customers and software and services.
OK, well, staying in the US now, and President Obama has been talking about the continuing deficit problems.
Yes, we talked all about the fiscal cliff, didn't we, before around Christmas time, and the latest deadline is to get a budget agreed by March the 1st. This is all about knocking $4 trillion over the next 10 years off the $16 trillion debt pile in the US. If a deal isn't done by March the 1st, a round of automatic spending cuts will kick in. Well, on Tuesday, President Obama said that he'd like to see some temporary measures put in place. Let's take a listen.
If Congress can't act immediately on a bigger package, if they can't get a bigger package done by the time the sequester is scheduled to go into effect, then I believe that they should at least pass a smaller package of spending cuts and tax reforms that would delay the economically damaging effects of the sequester for a few more months until Congress finds a way to replace these cuts with a smarter solution.
Well, let's get some of the day's company news now. And the US-based Liberty Global is buying Britain's second biggest pay TV company. It's paying $16 billion for Virgin Media. The deal will pit Liberty Global's owner, John Malone, against Rupert Murdoch, his longtime rival. Murdoch has a 40% stake in the UK's biggest TV provider, Sky B.
Britain's Royal Bank of Scotland is set to pay a fine for its part in the LIBOR rate rigging scandal. The final amount is still to be announced, but media reports suggest it could be up to €580 million. The news comes as the head of the bank's investment banking arm steps down.
And ArcelorMittal has posted full-year results after a difficult 2012. The world's biggest steelmaker said the slowdown in Europe hit demand. The company made a loss of €3.7 billion for the full year, but it says 2013 should be better with a 3% rise in global steel demand.
Okay, Matthew, we're going to move now from steelmaking to mining and the continuing problems in South Africa.
Yes, that's right. The mining sector there has been shaken by a series of industrial disputes that have often turned violent. And earlier this week, the world's biggest producer of platinum, Anglo American, reported heavy losses. Well, it's one of the companies struggling to rebuild both its image and its profitability.
South African Mining Minister Susan Shabangu was meant to reassure investors when she opened the Cape Town mining Indaba yesterday. South Africa must salvage its mining image after the labour unrest that shook the country's mining industry last year. In the platinum sector, the crisis is still ongoing. Anglo American Platinum Amplats announced their annual results this week. Strikes cost the largest producer €600 million. The net revenue decreased by 16%. The restructuring plan includes closing 4 shafts and selling 1 mine. The mining minister is accusing the company's CEO, Chris Griffith, of being arrogant.
Hopefully our actions demonstrate that we're not arrogant as a company. We're just in a lot of trouble. And a company in a lot of trouble has got no choice but to make itself profitable.
Amplats is offering new non-mining jobs for every job lost in the mines and is undertaking care of 14,000 workers retrenched. But this won't change the fundamentals of the platinum sector. Analysts say they aren't surprised by the rising costs. Salaries have increased by more than 10% a year.
Our productivity has gone backwards. The average man in a mine in South Africa underground is producing much less tons of rock than he was 10 and 20 years ago. But his pay is multiples of what it was. So it's related to productivity, it's related to costs.
Coupled with rising production costs, demand in platinum continues to decrease. Ironically, Anglo American and its competitors stand to gain more by reducing their production.
Karen Creed there. Well, finally, Matthew, we're going to look at some changes to a rather classic children's board game.
Yes, we're talking about Monopoly. Now, what's your favourite playing token on Monopoly?
Oh, it's hard to decide. I think it's probably either the dog or the iron.
Ah, okay.
Quite like the dog.
Well, one of the tokens is going to get its marching orders. The makers of the game have decided that it's time to make some changes. Now, we can look at the ones that currently exist. Now, they've decided to do this by some online voting, and here you can see the page. And there they all are lined up. Now, there are a range of new pieces as well to choose from. They include a cat, they include a robot as well. So it's about getting rid of one and bringing in a new one. And now I can tell you how the voting was looking. It's actually closed now, and it's going to be announced later this Wednesday. And it's sort of good news and bad news for you because of all of the pieces, and I think we have something to show which are the most popular and the least popular. Of all of the pieces, it's actually the dog that wins.
Hooray!
But sadly, did you say the iron?
Oh, yes.
The iron, I think, is down there, not doing so well, along with the boot and the wheelbarrow as well. So we will find out this exciting news later today.
Well, it would be dreadful to chuck out the dog in favour of the cat, wouldn't it? That wouldn't be fair at all. So we will have to tune in and see what happens. Thank you very much indeed, Matthew, for that look at today's business stories. The international weather is coming up next. Then Stuart Norval will be here with all the latest headlines. So do stay with us here on France 24.